Ezra Bridger learned a lot about the Force in a very short amount of time. He only trained with Kanan for about 4 years before having to strike out on his own. At this point, Ezra was a well-rounded Padawan with an education on how the living Force operated, having experienced both the light and dark side aspects. Most Jedi wouldn't have their first run-ins with the dark side until much later in their lives. However, Ezra was in the unfortunate situation of being around a lot of darkness all the time. The dark side would begin to call to him, and in some circumstances, Ezra would even answer. It seemed as though the dark side was drawn to Ezra in some way, and perhaps the boy actually had an affinity for it. As we know, many races and species can be naturally attuned to one side of the Force or the other, though it is definitely not uncommon for some individuals, especially humans, to be born with a natural affinity towards sides of the Force as well. Through specific events that happen in Rebels, we believe that Ezra Bridger is naturally drawn towards the dark side, and this may affect his return in the future. So my friends and acolytes, join me as we open up yet another holocron and dive into the discussion, and reveal why Ezra may be drawn to the dark side of the Force, and ultimately why he turns away from it anyway. The makings of Ezra joining the dark side are all there. It was very easy for him to be drawn towards it specifically because of his upbringing and childhood. The Bridgers were already big activists, speaking out against the tyranny of the Empire whenever they came to Lothal. While they may not have been the outright freedom fighters, picking up blasters with the rest of the rebellion, they used their influence within the media to send out anti-imperial propaganda to the people. Obviously, this was going to attract unwanted attention from the Empire, and the Empire would soon arrest the two Bridger parents, effectively leaving Ezra alone to grow up and fend for himself on the streets when he was only 5 years old. Bridger became a pickpocket and a thief, stealing bits of technology and reselling it to underground vendors and pawn shops. Ezra lived completely alone for 10 years until he met the Ghost crew. Ezra lived his life bobbing and weaving through Imperials, and he grew a distinct hatred for them and the Empire at large. At first, it was just because of what they did with his parents, and then it was how they occupied Lothal. And finally, when Ezra joined the rebellion, his hatred festered even more when he saw what the Empire was doing to the rest of the galaxy, something that he had not seen before. Ezra even stated at one point that he desires to learn the Force and become powerful so that he can protect those that he loves, and destroy the Empire and its inhabitants altogether. And it was at this point that Yoda confirmed how much anger Ezra held within him. These kinds of beliefs and motivations create a habitat within oneself that will perfectly nurture a deep-seated affinity for the dark side of the Force. The dark side is attracted to pain and those that have a will to dominate and change their situation. The dark side is all about change. The most powerful Sith are those who were born from loss. The Dark Lord of the Sith, Darth Bane, was born the day that Dessel grew so loathsome and fed up with his father's drunken abuse that he unintentionally used the Force to squeeze the man's heart until he died, quite literally hating him to death. A young Darth Zana was born right when a few Republic troopers killed one of her animal friends, and she used the Force to crush their helmets in. The emotions of Force-sensitive children are extremely potent and powerful, especially as naturally strong in the Force as one as Ezra is. There was never a time where a young Ezra actually demonstrated his connection to the Force in one big explosion of emotion, likely because Ezra only saw his parents getting taken away rather than being murdered in front of him. That being the case, the dark side rooted itself within Ezra and would grow over time, not being unlocked all at once. It was lucky for Ezra that there were many people who were connected to his parents and could help him. All of this is why the Jedi stopped accepting students older than near infancy. Childhood trauma had a massive impact on their future as a Force wielder. Perhaps if Ezra was trapped on Lothal, he would have embraced the dark side unintentionally. However, once he joined the rebellion, the more he began to interact with the Empire and gain more reasons to hate them. This boiled to the point where Ezra was able to take abilities that were naturally more inclined to the light, such as his connection with nature and animals, and corrupt it with his natural rage. A good example would be when Kanan was injured by the Grand Inquisitor, and in his fury, Ezra would use the Force to summon an enormous angry fire knock to attack the Imperials. It drew so much power out of the young boy that he passed out. And although he said he disliked the feeling of the dark side at first, he would begin to slowly be drawn into it, compromising with it more and more as his war with the Empire raged on. This idea is revisited on Malachor when Ezra meets Maul and the former Sith Lord begins to take an interest in the young boy. wanting him to foster the dark side within himself. Interestingly enough, the naive Ezra was willing to give in if it meant getting the job done, and we can see how easily he was able to slip right into the dark side when given the chance. But this brings up something incredibly interesting about Ezra. Almost every experienced Darksider that Ezra interacts with senses something deep within him that's worth exploring. Obviously, we specify experienced Darksiders because the Inquisitors didn't really bother trying to delve into Ezra's darker deeds. They just wanted to murder him. But the actual Sith, those that were trained specifically to find the darkness in others, could read Ezra like a book. Maul desperately desired to make Ezra his apprentice, going as far as to take on 2 other Jedi to make it happen, blinding Kanan in the process. Maul deeply believed in Ezra's abilities after watching and sensing them firsthand. When Ezra first dropped down, Maul of course was fascinated by him since he was a young Jedi in the era of the Empire. As he began to learn more about Ezra though, Maul would start prodding him into compromising his morals and his teachings by pushing him into situations where he needed to give in to power. Maul ingeniously used Ezra's fear of losing his friends against him, doing so to entice him into using the dark side to strike down the 7th sister. While Ezra is ultimately able to turn away from this and is reluctant, it is still clear that there is something within him pulling him towards the dark side. In fact, Maul does not give up trying to make Ezra his apprentice until the day he is killed by Obi-Wan Kenobi on Tatooine. But in the case of Maul, he often tries to get many to join him, but one who doesn't is Vader. Within the same time frame, Darth Vader was even astounded as to how Ezra was able to open the Sith holocron and activate the temple on Malachor. It's important to point out though that Vader had no knowledge that Maul led Ezra to this point, but he was still amazed that a young boy, a Jedi even, had enough sway within the dark side to make it happen in the first place. Even Darth Sidious became enamored with the young Ezra, having learned of all of his exploits, and no doubt received a report from Vader on how Ezra activated the Sith temple. Palpatine issued a decree that he wanted Ezra to be brought to him alive. His fascination deepened when Ezra accessed the world between worlds, revealing to Sidious that the boy was knowledgeable of many powerful secrets. He would appear to Ezra as kindly old Emperor Palpatine in a fake hologram, luring the young boy into activating the temple out of selfishness, promising the return of his parents, the thing that Ezra desired the most. But Ezra learned his lesson from Kanan's death, and knew this a long time ago. Perhaps it was the will of the Force for Kanan to die so that Ezra would learn this lesson and not alter the course of universal history by selfishly giving in to bringing his parents back. But we'll get into more of that in a moment. Back on the subject of Malachor, the idea that Ezra has a deep and intrinsic connection to the dark side is reinforced by how the Sith holocron reacts to his presence. As soon as Ezra opens it, the holocron guardian is willing to give him the information that he desires and promises him newfound power. Now, this may seem like regular Sith teachings, but we need to get first understanding on how Sith holocrons work, and then we will understand that this is highly irregular. This is not how Sith holocrons typically react to any Force wielders, even Sith. Darkside holocrons house the Sith Lord's most prized knowledge. Unlike Jedi holocron guardians, which are meant to help and guide the user to new information, Sith holocron guardians actively attempt to hinder or even deceive users from getting their knowledge. This is because guardians are a coded representation of the Sith Lord's personality and life. The Sith Guardians can easily become jealous of an overambitious student and try to keep their knowledge hidden, or they can simply deem the user unworthy and refuse to give them anything. Working with a Sith holocron guardian is a tricky and tedious process that can sometimes take days or even weeks before you can start getting into the real meat and knowledge of the holocron. This is something that in Legends, Darth Bane discovered when he first attempted to use Frida Nad's holocron. It was extremely rare for a Sith holocron guardian to immediately deem someone worthy and allow them to access all of their knowledge, and it was practically unheard of for the guardians to especially allow Jedi of all beings to access the knowledge held within. And yet, it seems that the holocron sensed Ezra teetering on the edge and decided to entice him with knowledge. If we look back, of all the people that attempted to sway Ezra to the dark side, the holocron got the closest, even beating out the methods of Sidious. this. The holocron represented itself as a listening ear, one who trusted Ezra's plight more than even his friends did. It manipulated him and got him to act upon his selfish feelings and indulge his anger and sense of self-righteousness. It was the holocron that brought Ezra into making darker decisions, and he even began using dark side abilities that he learned from it, going as far as to dominate the mind of an Imperial pilot and forcing him to kill his allies before committing suicide. Luckily, Kanan took the holocron before it could do any lasting damage. Even after the holocron was taken and hidden though, Ezra still wanted it and believed it might still be useful in defeating the Sith if he could only learn from them, sounding very familiar. All of this though was a lie, of course. Had Ezra continued learning from the Sith holocron, he would have truly fallen to the darkness. The obvious parallel to Anakin Skywalker makes this whole situation that much more interesting. Both Ezra and Anakin were drawn to the dark side for the same reasons. Ezra may not have had a love interest like Padme, but he was in love with his home, his people, and his friends, all of which was constantly used against him. Ezra, like Anakin, had a good heart, but out of all of that love bore selfishness and fear. The similarities between Anakin and Ezra are so close that Sidious even figured to use the exact same tactics to turn Ezra, appearing as a kindly old Uncle Palpatine in a white robe, offering to save and restore the thing that he desired most through a power that only the two of them could discover together. Which is of course intentional, since at that point in time Palpatine had already publicly shown himself to the galaxy as a haggard appearance. Yet, he chose to take on the image of regular Chancellor Palpatine to Ezra, but it seems that the Force had a different idea. Picking up where we left off from earlier, it was the will of the Force, it seems, that Ezra succeeded where Anakin failed. The dark side was vying for control over Ezra's destiny, but perhaps the Force knew that Palpatine would try, and so it allowed Kanan to die, and it worked through the Lothwolf Doom to teach Ezra to let go of everything that he had lost, to accept it as the will of the Force, as Anakin could not. That way, he would not use the world between worlds selfishly to bring his parents back, thus preventing a potentially catastrophic cosmic event. Ezra turned away from the dark when Anakin embraced it. But what does all of this mean? Ezra managed to succeed in resisting the dark side the first time, but we have no idea what he has endured while being with Thrawn all these years. Even the most powerful and experienced Jedi, such as Revan, come to mind, who eventually buckle under enough torture. Ezra already has the temptation to the dark, and there could be a chance that when he returns to the screen, he may not entirely be what we expect. Perhaps Ezra has embraced the dark side of the Force, or perhaps he has turned away from it yet again. In the end though, all it takes is enough compromise to have the dark side take hold. But what do you think, my friends? Do you believe that Ezra is naturally inclined towards the dark side? And if so, do you think he will return to line to the light or the dark? Let us know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. And as always, thank you for visiting our archives, and may the Force be with you.